How to raise capital out of GCC or Middle Eastern countries.
Own it. Be authentic about it.
I think they're actually struggling to find opportunities to allocate.
Positioning is your currency now. Due diligence and profiling is going to literally get you to the top. A lot of investors in the GCC are actually looking to invest in Asia now. What they're like, what they're reading, where they want you to be featured.
What's the easiest way to overcome that obstacle?
And this is probably the biggest advice that I give anyone is...
All right, so Lauren Martin, fresh off the boat from Dubai, fresh to Bali. How's things going? How are you experiencing the sunshine and all the rain we've been having?
Yeah, it's good. I've been here for nearly 2 months now. Just taking a break away from Dubai.
As I'm sure you need.
Yeah, Dubai is extremely hot over the summer, obviously, as everyone knows. So it's quite nice to get away from that, have a refresh, brainstorm, and obviously then I luckily met you guys.
We bumped into each other.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what is it you actually do? Maybe touch on a little bit of your history, what industries you've come from, and what you do now in Dubai. I think you're setting up things here and working together. Like, tell us a bit about it and how it works and all that kind of stuff.
So I have had my agency, Alita, for 8 years now. It started in London and it's now pivoted like every single agency out there, probably pivoted about 100 times. And we brought it to Dubai about 4 years ago. Mm-hmm. And we've had clients, pretty big real estate developers in Dubai, big, huge family offices, institutional, prop tech. My background, I've consulted at quite a few big Fortune 500 companies. Mm-hmm. And I actually started my career, don't ask how this has happened into a PR agency, but I actually started my career in working for an oil trading company.
Oh, wow.
And was there for 8 years.
I'm sure you saw lots of interesting things go down there.
Yeah, that was pretty fun. In central London, which is obviously, at that time, was amazing.
You're from London, yeah?
Yeah, from London originally.
Oh, wow. Born and bred, yeah?
Born and bred.
Whereabouts?
Greenwich.
Oh, okay, beautiful.
Yeah. Okay. So southeast Londoner. Yeah. You can't mix us with the river.
I was like on the Hackney Shoreditch side.
Oh, okay. So
years.
You are above the river then.
Yeah.
There's normally that divide.
Yes.
And then I brought it to Dubai, and then it just seemed to have just grew overnight. Really, we had some really nice repositioning clients. We did some work with Bengati, which was pretty cool. And we've done quite a lot of like WEF and Davos positioning and capital raising and investor relations. So
World Economic Forum, wow.
Yeah, that was pretty fun.
Conspiracy theorists are tuning in all of a sudden.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm not going to mention SPF, but I also did some work with that as well.
Okay, so Benghazi is a big developer.
Yeah.
What's the other? There's a couple of other big ones.
You have Damak.
MR.
MR, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So when you say agency, like what? Because there's all kinds of PRs, a catch-all, really.
Yeah.
Like what is the specialization? What are you doing really day in, day out?
So we actually specialize in reputation management and profiling. Mm-hmm. My biggest thing, we work with a lot of financial institutions, family offices, I mentioned, private equity firms, funds, hedge funds, and essentially now there is a gap in the market with people in these particular industries and actually growing their profile. So we specialise directly in that. We've done a lot of profiling, reputation management, in Europe, Dubai, Middle East, mainly focusing also on a global exposure. Our core offerings is the traditional profiling, PR. We also have an AI tool, which is quite cool, so we've jumped on that bandwagon. Okay. Moving with the times. And that's, again, a reputation tool, 24/7 scan on a reputation.
Okay, so mainly reputation. Okay.
And events.
And events, which is part of reputation, I suppose. Okay.
And the capital raising.
So what are we focusing on in this podcast today?
Positioning is your currency now. Mm-hmm. There's a fact there was a statistic which was 78% of investors and capital allocators will check the first 10 pages of Google on average to see where your name fits. So, and it is an interesting point behind this, is that if you're not anywhere to be found, or that there's any type of bad press out there, you completely decrease your chance of any type of capital raising or allocation just purely because somebody can't find you.
Okay, so that's it. So it's, I would say, bridging the capital gap between Middle East and, let's say, Bali, and all the things you need to do and things you should definitely avoid. Yeah. Boom. Okay, welcome back. Today we're here with Lauren Martin, and we are specifically talking about investment inflows. So how to raise capital out of GCC or Middle East, Eastern countries. The things you need to do specifically, like would you call it like more of a soft, like is reputation a soft measure? Is it, because you're obviously not dealing with like P&L and cash flow forecasts, etc. So we'll look at like the more soft side of raising capital, but specifically into Bali. So where Bali founders, developers, etc., are missing the opportunity of obtaining capital out of GCC, which I presume at the moment is one of the most capital active regions in the world. They are looking to allocate. So it's how founders and developers can get their piece of that.
Yeah, so I think there's a massive influx actually at the moment, and if you look from, say, especially last year, a lot of investors in the GCC are actually looking to invest in Asia now. There's Europe. I am European, so I can say this, but Europe feels a little bit. Obviously, there's so much going on in Europe. It's not stable. It's not a hugely stable market anymore to invest in. And Asia seems to be that present investment situation of where people can actually invest and want to invest. It's emerging, but it's already almost got there, right? And then the next is probably going to be Africa. Africa is still that emerging market. It's quite interesting to quite a lot of investors, especially not so much real estate at the moment, but more the commodity side. I think with bridging the gap between Middle East and Asia, there was a big influx last year in Thailand, and investors actually invested into Thailand and Bangkok. There is obviously a huge
Middle Eastern investors,
investors.
So invested into Bangkok as in property or private equity?
Mainly real estate. There is a lot of crypto as well within this part of the world, which actually is quite a nice aspect, right?
At the moment, it's
we don't talk about it. At the moment, it's like it's the buzzword. But especially for Bali, there's a really lovely conversation now on Bali, because a lot of people have done it. They've also been burnt. They've also been they've made insane returns, probably more so than anywhere in the world. And there's just that one thing I think that's missing with the investment here, and it's due diligence, having that everything ready. Like you have one chance with these kind of investors. They are interested in this part of the world, and they are especially interested in Bali. As long as you've got a really solid area within Bali, there's a strong ROI on that. But due diligence and profiling is going to literally get you to the top. And that is your currency of actually getting those investors.
Okay, so what are they actually looking at? Like, so due diligence, reputation.
Yeah.
If you had to break those down a little bit further, what are the sub-points to each of those? So, what does that actually entail on a little bit more of a deep, like if somebody's doing I don't want to go into like a formal DD and what they're looking for, etc. But, maybe bring that to light, a bit more. Like, what are the aspects of that?
So, for example, your marketing and everything that you position yourself online is the first thing somebody's going to look at. That is your portfolio now, especially your social media. And social media is actually it's a slightly tricky one actually for profiling, because there's a fine line between privatizing your life and profiling your life. And there's actually a gap between the profiling side. And profiling, you need to be positioned in a certain way, which means press releases with solid publications. It's getting yourself out there in their world. It's knowing your ICP literally down to a T, that you know exactly what they're like, what they're reading, where they want you to be featured. So, for example, if you're looking at the Middle Eastern investors, it would be quite beneficial to have yourself featured in Khaleej Times or Gulf News, even though you're out of the country. And it's just, again, it's building that trust. If you can get into those publications in the first place, they always do their due diligence. So you've already kind of got over one gap. You've already got over one step of that profiling and building that trust. The second thing is that people still buy people, especially in the Middle East. And there's a massive part of building rapport, which is, again, slightly different to Europe, is that it is based on people and it is based on building that relationship. If they already know or feel like they know you from an online presence, whether that's an interview, whether that's something like this, like a podcast, there's already that instant trust if they can see that you actually know what you're talking about. And that you can read people, right? People read people as much as they trust people. And I think that's a big part of this.
How sanitized? I mean, you talk about social media. I see founders or developers or business people in Bali. Their social media profiles, I would say, a little bit more, I wouldn't say controversial, but, controversy sells and gets likes, etc., etc. So how sanitized are those kinds of investor types? It's just difficult. It's not corporate world out here. It's not like a sanitized Wall Street, etc. What are they expecting? Because I just know, some of their personalities here.
Yeah.
It's a pioneer market. There's personalities. There might be a bit of a disconnect there.
Yeah, I think my biggest word for this is authentic. I think as long as somebody is authentic with their social media, their presence online, then I think that goes miles. And actually, people can read if it's authentic or not. If it's the same. And this is no way by any means, slagging anybody's social media off. But if it's the exact same templates, the exact same way that they're speaking in every single video, and it's like 5 other coaches or influencers, and it's like a copy word for word of actually how they're doing it, how they're speaking, then it's not authentic. You've copied it from someone else. If your personality and you're being authentic to actually how you portray yourself, then that's a different story. So you can be online. Yes, you can show your family. Yes, you can show that you love surfing. That you're quite into spiritual, activities or whatever that is. It's just being authentic to it.
And what about like a little bit of controversy or, saying things that obviously get some people riled up? How much appetite is there for that kind of personality?
I think...
Because it's a very conservative market.
It's very conservative, but it's also the people that I've dealt with, and I'm talking on behalf of the people that I have dealt with and I work with very closely. They're conservative, but they also are people, right? And they buy into people. So actually, it's not harm if they're being authentic. My only thing about controversial conversations is that politics is quite a tricky one to ever overcome. And I think there's for your own, it's not, it's freedom of speech, and also rightly so. But I think it's also just being mindful of that.
Yeah.
Especially at the moment.
Freedom of speech. The UK is doing very well with that at the moment.
Yeah, exactly. I think there was like a few million people that turned up to a rally.
Yeah. I saw that. Yeah, that was crazy.
Yeah.
Shit.
And I think also, actually on that point, it's if you go to stuff like that, own it. Be authentic about it. If that's your view, stand by it. Be authentic. Just there's a way that you can portray your views.
And maybe not every investor will appreciate it, and that's fine also,
But then they're also probably not the investor for you.
Yeah, exactly.
But at least you kind of whittled those out at the beginning.
Okay.
Yeah.
So where would you say at the moment, because there's not a lot of I think there's a lot of Middle Eastern interest in Bali, but there's not a lot of Middle Eastern capital. So where do you think that where are they missing each other?
I think it's, again, the trust.
You think it's trust?
I think it's trust.
You don't think it's maturity or legacy?
I think a lot of it falls on trust, because I think if you think of the longevity of certain funds that they invest in, there isn't actually a longevity. Sometimes they're only investing in a term for 18 months to 5 years. So the legacy part doesn't quite come into it, personally, I think. Not in outside investments. In their own family offices, of course, legacy is the top main priority. Investments, not so much. It's ROI, really, is the main goal. I think the problem is it is the trust. And I think it's, in the Middle East, due diligence is like the be-all and end-all of a deal, really. And it's the steps that they go through to actually achieve that, the simple stuff, KYC, AML, PEP, that they go, those immediate checks. But I think the trust within maybe possibly the system, but also the way that you invest into the products. For example, if you're building a villa and you have somebody and you're trying to get an investor to invest in that one particular villa, versus investing in a PE fund that's based in Bali, and they allocate that capital into where they see fit, and it might just go into a villa. That's two different situations. I could probably guarantee that they'll take the latter, and they take the PE fund. They take the PE fund.
Really?
There's a lot more trust. There's a lot more stability in that. It's a completely different ball game than just investing in one project that could be gone tomorrow.
You could say that about the PE fund, though, also.
You could, but then it's a lot more diverse. Obviously, again, it would be a due diligence, but one particular villa, I think, would really turn them off.
I also think it's a lack of opportunity, a lack of investment opportunity.
Yeah.
There's just not that many options. I mean, you can buy a villa or off plan or something, but that's pretty much it. There's no, I mean, we do it, the Kedungu fund, it's a bit of private equity venture, but there's not that many around. So I think they're actually struggling to find opportunities to allocate.
Yeah.
And then when they do, I think they usually just fail because the DD falls over.
Yeah.
There's not enough maturity or experience. Yeah. It's a very pioneer kind of environment. So I think those old school measures on placing an investment, I think, would fail very quickly in a market like this.
Yeah.
So I think sure, reputation is important, but those family offices are very conservative with their placement. They don't mind not making money, but they refuse to lose.
Oh gosh, yeah, they won't lose.
Yeah, they just can't. So, so if they only make a couple of percent, it's fine.
Yeah.
So Bali is seen as a high risk environment.
Yeah.
A low, I wouldn't say regulation, but it's a bit loose and easy around. And I think for investors, that can sometimes be tricky.
Yeah, there is a really nice wave in the Middle East though, and that's the family offices. You can see that the generation shift. So now the granddads would have started. If you look at the time frame of the Middle East, especially the UAE, obviously it saw in independence. I think it was like 53 years ago. So you have the grandfathers that's passed it on to the sons, and now it's the grandchildren that are actually now taking over the funds, if not the second generation. And they are more open to certain riskier investments, purely the age, the kind of generation that they're in say, a global impact, the exposure that they have themselves. And I think that's a really lovely wave to tap into.
Yeah, I think so. Well, I think they've been very exposed to crypto, new markets, and I think those old traditional markets are just not very attractive anymore. Buying a REIT in the UK somewhere is just not,
No.
So you've worked with family offices, ultra high net worth individuals, etc. I'm sure you've seen, a couple of those kind of investments cross your desk. What are the red flags that they would immediately kind of look for? You've mentioned reputation. and founder reputation.
Yeah.
What else is on that list that we'd think would happen in Bali more often than not?
I think the instant, and this is probably the biggest advice that I could have anyone, or give anyone, is have everything perfect and ready. Documentation, compliance documents ready. You know, like that is the biggest turn-off for any type of investor, especially in the Middle East. They will have their compliance team check it. They check everything, you know. Even if somebody purchases my AI tool, their compliance team checks it to see if it's data ready, if it's compliant with GDPR, ISO, like all of the types of licenses. And if you can get your compliance and your back end and your data compliant with these types of licenses, and you've already jumped about 10 hurdles. Again, it's the trust.
Yeah. I mean, we're just grappling with getting building licenses at the moment.
Exactly. You don't have to have the licenses, but I think even being compliant to those, it is a big step.
Okay, so I'm doing a development, and Middle East is of interest.
Yeah.
Where would I even start to look at like the kinds of things and licenses and building and sustainability and I don't know, all those kinds of checks and measures that they would look at? Like what do I even do if I'm a say developer in Bali?
Yeah. Where
would I even start looking at the kinds of things and all those little checks and balances and that a Middle Eastern investor would look at, which would give me credibility, but I wouldn't even know what they are. I'm still dealing with getting my building license.
Yeah.
Nothing else. Like, what other things are there?
So there's a company that I actually work with exclusively, and they're the only company I'd ever trust with this. And they're based in DIFC, and they basically they get you ready for that.
What's DIFC?
Which is the Dubai International Financial Centre.
Okay.
So it's basically the world trade of New York versus Dubai. It's the literal financial centre. It's really actually quite difficult to even get a license there, a company license.
Okay.
But that particular company is called Solid Future, and they go in and they actually get you AI ready. But as part of that, they do your governance, they check your people.
What do you mean by AI ready?
So AI is the new boom.
I do know that, yeah.
Most companies aren't really even utilising AI, and everybody has to get used to it. Otherwise, you're never gonna
Oh, so
grow.
they get they're like consultants, AI consultants.
Yeah.
Okay. So
And
onboarding AI tools and systems, etc.
Well, they actually scan the company, so it's a really interesting model, and they scan the entire company. And they do the governance, the people, the leadership, the processes, the tech, everything.
Oh, okay.
You'd have to have a consultant, basically, to actually get you ready.
Okay.
Is where I was going with that.
Okay. And I presume, Dubai, nothing's cheap, but the upside is, I suppose, worth it.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. It's an investment that will stay with you forever, right? Like if there also isn't really a choice anymore. You actually have to have your company ready for AI. And that does include policies, processes and governance now, especially.
Okay. I know we chatted about this earlier, but legacy.
Yeah.
I think it's important.
Yeah.
How long you've been in the market, your experience in the market, etc. Like Bali has zero legacy.
Yeah.
How can Bali business people, developers, etc., how do they get around that? They don't have. It's all very new. I know you said tech sector is similar.
Yeah.
I suppose you can weigh in on your historical experience outside of the Bali market, but there's nobody's done 23 developments here like Imar or something. So.
Yeah.
It's first or second. I think that's one of the biggest hurdles. Like, how do you see that? What's the easiest way to overcome that obstacle?
There's a beauty of actually being honest about that it is a new market. And I think it's actually embracing that. You're never going to have legacy or generational existence in a country where they're so new. There's obviously the country's not new, but the developments are so new. I think it's all about track record. Even if you have got 2 to 3 developments, even if you're on your first one, what architect are you using? There's always a way that you can leverage off of what you're actually doing. I think it's positioning that. So what architect are you using? What's their track record? You know, have they built developments in Europe? Have they built developments in the Middle East? Have they done other developments in Asia? What ones have they done here? That's one side of it. The other side is, who are they? Who are these people? Like, for example, if you're in real estate now and you're developing, but you was previously, I don't know, in fintech, leverage that. You know, that's a lot more relatable than actually just saying you've started developing villas in Bali. And then that's your trust, and that's actually building the legacy.
So reputation through association.
Yeah, for sure. You know, nobody can do, I'd be really surprised, maybe I can be proved wrong, but nobody can go in and do every single part of a build, of a real estate build. So using, you know, even the interior designers, there's the villa that I'm staying in at the moment is beautiful, and it's a European, it's Dutch designed, and you can tell, like, it's got the really beautiful wood, and it's got like the style of a Nordics. That's what you can leverage off.
And I suppose for business, it would be, you know, board of directors, your governance models, your partners, your
processes.
Yeah, exactly. But also association. So, you know, especially board, I would think, like your non-execs and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, and I think that's the best thing. Is, you know, where have your board of directors come from? Have they come from London? Have they come from New York, Middle East? Where have they come from? And it's actually leveraging that. And I think that's what most people actually forget to do. You've hired this person based off of a resume, but you're not leveraging their profile, which again is why it's so important also as a company to actually leverage your board of directors to really grow your company. So again, it always comes down to profiling.
Again, it's also maturity. I mean, I think most businesses here have no idea even how a board of directors even works. Netherlands, you know, has one. So I think baby steps and just getting your board decks done and your governance, you know, processes and procedures. At least it starts getting everybody in the right, working in the right direction. So that maybe not tomorrow, but in 3, 4, 5 years, your models are there and your governance models are there, and you've got a board that functions like boards should. You know.
Absolutely.
But it's just growing up, I suppose, as part of being a new market to something that's more mature.
I actually think it's the fun of it. There's probably not another market like this, how it is at the moment. And I think that's one of the most amazing, exciting opportunities that also if you can be those types of developers or funds, and you're actually bridging the gap between the Middle East and Bali especially, you're going to be one of the first in the players in the game. So if you can do that early on, you're pretty much set. And that's a lovely gap that's not actually being utilised enough at the moment.
And I think a lot of businesses are close. You know, they're close to just getting where Bali is just at the tipping point, where it's just attractive enough for, like, even some European family offices or institutions that would start really looking at it. We just got to get our act together, better.
Well, let's put it this way. Everybody wants to get their money out of Europe. So they've got to put it somewhere.
Exactly.
That includes Middle Eastern investors plus also Europeans.
Yeah, and it's a lot of it's gone into the Middle East. Well, where's Middle East? Is it all oil money? Like, where's all the cash coming from these days? I suppose, you know, in that market. Was it self-generating now, I suppose? Yeah,
very different markets actually. Obviously, back in the day, it used to a lot of it used to come from commodities, forex, derivatives, that kind of world, the financial world and investments. Now it has changed. Crypto is huge, especially in Dubai. There's a lot more regulations. It's a lot more of a trusted currency now in the Middle East. It's also coming from so many different ways, like fintech, AI. There's huge in the Middle East. There's a massive government push on AI. They're teaching it to kids in the schools as like a subject that they have to learn now. They also have a government-backed campus.
Okay.
The capital is coming from all shapes
everywhere.
and sizes, yeah.
And I suppose
think that's
they're
the
kind
beauty
of,
of it.
what they're looking to invest in will be reflective of that. So, I mean, they're going after tech, they're going after AI.
Yeah, real estate is huge in the Middle East.
Yeah. I mean, you've had a real estate boom. It's been incredible. I was there, a couple of months ago, but before that I hadn't been there for 15, 20 years. It's crazy. It's nuts, the changes.
Yeah,
it's next level. Okay, so real estate, I mean, sure, it's attractive, but probably not as attractive as some of the tech sectors.
Yeah.
But how is the real estate market there? Because if that real estate market had to come off the boil a little bit, or just had to not get a little bit oversaturated, or the ROIs weren't as good. I mean, there's thousands and thousands of apartments, I presume, being sold. They would definitely start to look elsewhere. Or do you think the Dubai property market is just because the population is growing so fast, because everybody's trying to escape, Europe and America? Where do you see that going in the next 5 years?
I think the Dubai, especially the UAE market, and I talk about Abu Dhabi, Ras Al Khaimah, and Dubai specifically, there is a massive boom. And the projects that they launch, they're very, very clever on how they launch projects versus how they launch developments. What I mean by that is, if you look at Ras Al Khaimah, you have an insane boom at the moment with developments because of the casino. In Dubai, you have the new Palm being built. So now there's another boom. So they're very clever with how they piece certain events around developments, especially real estate. The beauty of it is that people still keep a lot of their cash in the Middle East, but they also want diversity. A lot of these guys are seasoned investors. Even if they're in their 30s, they've been investing because their parents have invested for their entire life. They're extremely smart people. They do want to diversify their portfolios. Europe was obviously a massive player in their portfolios. They don't do that anymore. A lot of them. They are investing in Asia just purely out of diversity. Dubai is quite a safe market. Surprisingly, it is actually quite a safe market to invest in.
But you can't have all your eggs in one basket.
You can't have it all there.
Yeah.
It's also a nightmare.
As in having all your eggs in one basket? Or
yeah, for sure.
Dubai is a nightmare.
Say, for example, if there was, I don't know, there's a lot of wars going on at the moment, which are actually quite close. All you need is something to happen.
Well, I mean, it's close. I mean, Qatar and,
it's
that whole
extremely
thing.
Close. Yeah. So it's diversifying a portfolio, and an actual solid, seasoned investor will always do that.
Anything else you want to touch on, specifically like Bali specific? Anything you've seen that you think would be great for business people or etc. to jump on the back of that you see as a gap?
I think my biggest thing for Bali would be find your USP. What makes you different to the hundreds of villas that are being built or apartments here, and find your niche in that. What makes you different? What's actually going to attract somebody from the Middle East? And I think taking time, we're all I've done this before. I have my own business. I look at my business, I think it's amazing. But if you actually go in the depths of it, everybody has cracks in their business. And just finding out and navigating what actually makes you different versus the hundreds of other villas or the hundreds of other developments, focusing on that. And that's what separates you from everyone else.
And then obviously all the other things we discussed, transparency, credibility,
absolutely,
personality, all those kinds of things.
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, not that we have a lot of Middle Eastern viewers, but I'm sure one or two would pick this up. Like, if they were going, okay, I agree, I think Asia is a great place to look at. You understand the Bali market. They might have zero idea.
Yeah.
They would look at it with certain tinted glasses. Like, what would you say the mistakes that they're making in looking at Bali and going, well, what something's turning them off or something? And where would you say, give them a little bit of more leeway because they are new and fresh and a pioneer kind of environment?
Okay, I did this before I came to Bali, and I'm not ashamed to admit this. On Google, Bali real estate investments, and then every single thing comes up. that's probably the worst thing you can do, because you literally get piled with a load of different things. It's overwhelming. You're not actually seeing where you're going with this. I think the biggest thing is actually just coming here and navigating it on foot, which is actually what we did, which is how I met you guys. And I think actually coming here and meeting people yourself and actually seeing the village yourself, I think that's the only way that you can actually start.
I think from a retail buyer, B2C, that's goes without saying. But if you're looking a little bit more up the food chain, family office or small institutional, what are the first steps that they could take? Maybe, I don't know.
I think the first steps is meeting people. I genuinely mean that. I think if you look at the Middle East, they very, very rarely take a Zoom call. If you're in the Middle East, they want to meet you. Yeah,
I mean, that's why we packaged and sent Omri
exactly.
to Dubai, for the exact reason, because it was difficult. It was really difficult to secure.
Really tough.
But when you do, it's easy.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
And it's funny, this is actually what Omri and I spoke about the other day, is you have to be there on foot. They'll just say, okay, no worries, we'll see you when you're back. I've been here for nearly 2 months, and I've got people that I've worked with for like nearly 10 years. They still refuse to have a Zoom call. Or it's like a quick, hi, yeah, you okay? What's wrong? Yeah. They want to see you in person.
That's strange. Why do you think that is?
I think it's a cultural thing. Okay. I think it's also respect. And I think it's actually... It's just how they do business. It's like London in the 80s.
Well, London in the 80s, you didn't have any alternative.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And I think actually it's quite a great way. It's a nice way to do business. You're keeping it personalised.
No, I prefer it. It's just sometimes a little bit more. It is more impractical, but you've got to fly around the world like we did in the 80s.
Yeah.
But I don't know if that's the way it is. That's the way it is. So. Yeah. I mean, and do you think like things like expo, like, okay, so say I wanted to go and rustle up some business in Dubai. What do I even do? I get off the airport, go to a coffee shop, my hotel, and then what,
Network events.
So is that a big thing?
Huge thing. Okay. Events are, and if you could, so it's one of the services we actually provide, and we curate an entire room of, say, 20 to 30 investors, depending on your type of investment. And we bring your perfect ICP in that room. And then it gives you a stage to actually introduce yourself and kind of pitch the product, but without pitching and not like the salesy, cringe way. More like a fireside chat, let's say that.
So not like a TED Talk.
No, not like a 100-year TED Talk. Nobody wants to listen to it. And that's actually a great way, because you get the perfect people selected in a room, and they're listening. They're already there because they understand the product or they know the product itself, and they've got an interest. And then they're there, and then you can actually build that relationship off of that. What you do after that event is probably the most crucial part of it. If you just leave it and expect them to come to you, they're never going to do it. It's not the way the culture works. It's schmoozing, it's follow-up, it's making sure that you're in the top of their mind. It's a bit more sophisticated, but it is becoming way more Western. As I mentioned, there's a casino being built in Ras Al Khaimah. I mean, that's like completely new and different. But actually there are bars, there are places that you can meet. One of the biggest things are private members clubs, and they're quite new to the Middle East, especially Dubai, but they are actually a really great place to meet people.
Like the Soho House kind of thing?
Soho House isn't there yet, but you have Arts Club, Capital Club, and a few others.
So what are those, more like health, and then or just bars,
just pure,
restaurants?
Okay. Bars, restaurants, meetings. But conferences are probably also the best place you can meet these people. Family office events are probably the best in Dubai and Abu Dhabi.
Okay, and they throw their own events, or is it facilitators or third parties like yourself?
It's facilitated, yeah.
Okay. Any other wise words of wisdom that you can bestow onto the Bali market?
No, I think that's it.
Yeah?
I don't think, I mean, I've spoke so much.
We'll,
They'll probably be fed up of listening to me.
No. It was short and sweet and to the point. And I think a lot of people appreciate the message. Maybe a little bit uncertain of how to, do it.
Yeah.
And what's involved, and it's a lot of work.
Yeah.
On the DD side, reputational is probably a little bit easier, but building that kind of voice is important. But it takes time, time and a lot of effort. And
it does.
So I think if anybody wants to learn more or have more detail and insights on how to do it, and it is a service that you provide.
Yeah.
We'll put your link below, and subscribe, follow. I think we're doing another podcast next week, which will be really interesting. We're still finalizing the topics, but keep in touch. And any questions, or if you want anything, podcast ideas, please just put it in the comments, and we'll for sure get back to you. Thanks so much. Yeah.
Thank you. Thanks so much.